It was 3 years ago when I was helping out at the Saturday evening Mass in Delano. We had the same gospel, and the deacon was preaching, and he began the sermon by singing a spiritual, and he invited the congregation to join him. It was, put your hand in the hand of the man who stilled the waters. And I was the only one who didn't know the lyrics, so I was sitting there, I Googled them right before I came over, but I left them in the car. So you do not have to worry about me starting to sing. But one of the reasons I wanted to use the lyrics is because I think it tries to get at the heart of the gospel message. Many of the spirituals did when they took a text or a story from Scripture. They more often than not got right down to the business of it. And storm at sea, and then somebody comes walking on the water, the master, and the story plays out. Now, the first thing about this is if you've ever been in a boat and a storm takes over and you really are basically helpless. And that's the context of this. I know what that is because way back when I was in the seminary, I had a similar experience. I was in a religious community, and we had a very nice place on Lake George, which is a very large lake in the eastern Adirondacks. And I decided to go out on a camping trip by sail. And we got the boat ready, we got all the provisions in, got the sails up, I sailed out, and a couple miles off, we were overtaken by a squall. And that's when I discovered something very uncomfortable. Nobody was the other three weren't responding at all. So I had to yell an order to take the jib down, which is the sail in front of the first sail on the boat, and the guy went like this. He didn't know what a jib was, and I thought I had to point at the thing, And then, since they were all cowering underneath in the boat, I had to put my foot on the tiller and bring down the main sail, and then sit down myself and put the boat into the wind, because that's the best way to kind of ride it out. And of course, as I was sitting there, I was getting mad. And when I asked them, as the squall left us, we got sailing again, and as we were sailing, I said, "Guys, what happened here?" That's when I discovered the three of them had never been on a sailboat before, but they hadn't told me. And as we were going up the lake, we found a little cove, and it was a perfect spot to camp. And after supper, it was very quiet. We weren't talking at all. And I began to realize that the air was kind of thick, You could cut it with a knife. And afterwards, I got my little sleeping bag and put it out on the rock. And they were all underneath the trees on the soft ground. And one of them said, "Well, why are you doing that?" I said, "Well, I want to see the stars before I go to sleep." Actually, I didn't want to be around them because I was mad. And they were mad at me. So I said, "Okay, you first. Why are you mad at me?" And he said, "Why were you shouting at us?" I said, "Well, because you didn't do anything, and I had to tell you what to do. And we didn't have time to have a kiss-up session. There's an order because I had to push you." "Well, so you think you know how to sail?" And I thought, this is getting dangerous here. I said, "Well, I have the confidence that I could do it. But did you have the confidence in me that I could do it?" And that was a little bit like Jesus' situation. They didn't seem to have the confidence in him, even though they saw something extraordinary. He seemed to have an ability to do things like calm a storm and have Peter come out on the water walking. But they failed to really have confidence and trust that he was able to do what he was doing. The wind was up. We're in the bark of the church. That was one of the old images of the church, was a very large ship that was taking everybody across the turbulent waters of this world to the safe haven of heaven. And there are times when it is turbulent and it seems like the boat is rocking. And we're I think, in that kind of a situation. We have difficult times and things are buffeting us one way or another. And do we continue to have confidence in the church that we're safely on our way somewhere? And I think even beneath that, do we have confidence in Jesus that he's directing the church and the bark of the church and us in the boat? And that lack of confidence, I think, is one of the issues that anybody who lives in the world that we live in has to face. Because there's an acid in the air that kind of denies anything outside of what you can see directly. There's a technical word, there's no transcendence. There's no sense of a supernatural. Everything is this world and that's all there is. Well, the problem with that is it's this world, but there's a lot of things in this world that you have to see. And one of the things about that spiritual is, when you put your hand in his hand, you see things differently because you see things that you didn't see before, but they were always there. Jesus was always there with them. He just was showing them something that they hadn't seen before. It was a deeper Jesus. It was a more of his reality. You might use the word inner reality coming out. And that's true of the world we live in. There's a reality that will manifest itself sometimes, and it's not going to destroy the world we live in. It's going to show us that there's more to it than we can see. And that's a good thing. That's a wonderful thing, because the face of that other reality is the merciful Lord. It's the one who came among us, just like us, but was crucified, but conquered the one thing that we all have to face and dread, death. And so his power now is more than seeping into our lives and the world around us. It's there for the taking. But we have to have the confidence to follow it. We have to have the confidence of our own faith and of our own church and of our own religion, that grace is here. Grace is stronger than our difficulties. Grace is even better. It's going to make us look better when we can take the masks off and then we can see each other's face. Kind of an image of what it's going to be like in glory. We will reflect the glory of God and see in each other things we never saw before. And they're going to be good things because God has transformed us into his image and likeness. But hold on to it. Don't be like Peter, Lord, I want to walk on the water. It's like, show me you can do it to me. So he gets out and he fails because he becomes afraid, because he becomes afraid of the wind. But I think it was more than that. I think he failed in his confidence. And not just in his own confidence, but he failed in his trust in Jesus. He said he was going to rely on his word, and then he didn't. But then Christ came back. Peter made more than one mistake in the Bible, but he became the prince of the apostles, and he died crucified upside down because he didn't want to do it the way his master did it. He wasn't worthy of it, so they put him upside down. And at the end of his life, he was a rock. He had more than confidence.